it just looks better and better and better. What a road trip by the Seattle Mariners. And yes, I re-recorded this open because I just watched the Mariners take 2 out of 3 in Toronto. Paul Sewald just closed it out, a 7-2 win in Buffalo. That is the kind of road trip that's going to instill some confidence, not just in the team, the players and the coaches, but the front office, the ownership, and certainly the fan base, is it not? They're going to come home and play a Texas Rangers team. I believe it's a 4-game series. It starts on Thursday. And that's a team they should win 3 of 4. I'm not saying they're going to, and then if they don't, then something's wrong or it's like horrible, but that is a team that they really should win 3 of 4. And if they do just that, I am going to have to change the tone of the conversation that we're having about the trade deadline with this team. Remember, I've always said, we're not there yet, we're not there yet, we're not there yet. But every day we get a little bit closer to that point. Every win the Mariners put on the board, every series they win, every half game they inch closer to the wild card is potentially a different situation. Now, again, as we sit here through the Toronto series, we're not there yet. We're not at the Mariners are buyers. The Mariners are buyers. We're not there. We're absolutely not there yet. And we're not really close to that. Although there are lots of creative ways that a general manager that's as creative as Jerry Dipoto is can go out and buy without actually buying in the traditional sense. Meaning you add to your club at minimal costs, at minimal risks. Jerry's done that before. I mean, we go back to 2018 when they essentially traded nothing for Denard Span and Alex Colomé, and both those players helped. Are they stars? Were they No. Colomé wasn't even the closer. He was more the 8th inning guy setting up Edwin Diaz, but they needed that. It lengthened their bullpen. It made everybody else in the bullpen better, including Edwin Diaz. Denard Span gave them outfield depth they just did not have. So while the buy may not end up being aggressive, it can make a difference. But we're getting closer and closer to maybe the Mariners just end up holding their bullpen. But we're not there yet. We don't know that yet. Nobody knows that yet. They could lose 8 in a row and find themselves 11 back in the wild card race, right? I mean, they're shooting for one spot. They don't have really any sort of realistic chance in the American League West. They're not catching the Astros. They're not catching the A's. They're certainly not catching both of them, right? And one of those teams, Astros and A's, are in the race for the wild card with, right now, what appears to be whoever doesn't win the American League East, Boston or Tampa. Boston's in the lead right now with 50 wins. But you have to pass one of those teams, which is going to be awfully, awfully difficult. But just because it doesn't look very likely that the Mariners catch one of those teams, that they pass everybody that's in front of them, including Cleveland, and they pass, they stay ahead of the Yankees and they stay ahead of the Blue Jays. Even if we assume that they do that, who knows if they're going to be able to ever catch Tampa or Oakland or Boston or, they have to catch one of those teams, at least one of those teams, and probably, 2 of the teams that we just talked about. Maybe the Yankees fade out, maybe Cleveland fades out, but are the Rays and the A's going to fade out? Probably not. And you certainly can't rely on that. So when you have several teams to chase and you're 4, 5, 6 games back, it's a different conversation. But again, I'll go back to the point that I was making at the outset of this. 2 points, actually. One, we're getting closer to having a really good idea what the Mariners are going to do and what they should do. And 2, we're getting closer to a point where Seattle doesn't like selling Kendall Graveman and Drew Steckenrider. It's choosing not to do that and taking the outside chance that you make up 5 or 6 games on the Rays or the A's. There are lots of scenarios where that's not a terrible decision at all. Not at all. It's not like you're trading Kendall Graveman for somebody's, future star shortstop. Or Steckenrider, right? They're minimal gains, relatively speaking. Not that you can't get useful players, not that you can't package players together with them and do something. That's certainly on the table. But when you kind of flesh this out, not trading Kendall Graveman and not trading Drew Steckenrider, not trading the pending free agents that you have, and giving yourself the 4% chance or the 9% chance or whatever it is to catch whoever's in the wild card lead, the number 2 wild card lead at the time, might actually make the most sense. And in what manner where it absolutely will make the most sense? Well, it would certainly make more sense than the alternative, and that's trading Steckenrider and Graveman and maybe others. This fan base. The Mariners have shot themselves in the foot on and off the field for years. They need some wins, man. They need some wins. They need some. I was telling Luke Arkins the other day, if I were the Mariners, I'd be looking for these kinds of wins. I would probably go to Kyle Seager and say, hey, where are you at? Where's your head? Or at least go to his agent. Where's Kyle's head at? Would he like to come back here next year? Because I would be willing to pick up the $15 million option on Kyle Seager today. Because that's one less spot I have to worry about next year. At the very least, I'm getting an above replacement level and probably an average third baseman back in my lineup, a veteran I can rely on. And granted, $15 million is kind of a lot of money for an average third baseman, but again, there are only so many resources available. In the third base market, unless you're spending big on a Chris Bryant, isn't good. It's not like you can just go out and pick among like 9 quality free agent third basemen. And that's including the players out there that are really second baseman or shortstop that that you can actually move to third base. I mean, Marcus Semien has come up. There's going to be tons of competition for Marcus Semien. Thinking that you're getting him on a 1 or 2 year deal, I mean, how do you get Marcus Semien to come to Seattle, of all places, on a 1 or 2 year deal? You either grossly overpay him on the AAV, like giving him like $2.60 or something, which is ridiculous, or you give him the 5-year deal, which also doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So if we're talking about the short-term deal, why aren't the Yankees involved? And why would Semien pick Seattle over the Yankees? If we're talking 1 or 2 year deal or even 3 year deal, why doesn't he just go back to Toronto? Why aren't the Nationals involved? Why aren't the Cubs involved? You know what I'm saying? But they need wins like that. Seattle needs wins like that. The ownership and the front office in general need to show that, not just say, they need to show that they care about winning, and that while they're not going to go ape crap crazy with payroll, that they're not afraid to commit some dollars. Now, Jerry Dipoto has been out on the radio circuit and the media circuit, more than just hinting, saying that he believes the club is going to spend some money. But here's what I'm afraid of, and spread this to your friends and family who, are even casual fans. When Jerry Dipoto says they're going to spend some money, like, what are the chances that means we're going after Corey Seager? Like, what are the chances of that? Like, probably not very good, right? We're going to go out and spend $250 million on Trevor Story. We're going to go give Javier Baez, who's having a bad year, $180 million. That's probably not what he's talking about, right? But we talked about this before, adding several 3 to 4 win players, and when I say several, I mean like 3, 4, makes a ton of sense. But third base is going to be a difficult one to fill if indeed the Mariners either trade or decline the option on Kyle Seager and let him hit free agency and leave. Now, I'm not saying that picking up the option is the only way to keep Kyle Seager, because you can go to Kyle Seager and say, hey, how about 2 and 25? And we'll just kill that option and just see what he says. I mean, maybe he wants to go. Maybe he wants to get closer to home. He's from the South. He's from the Atlantic coast. Maybe he wants to go to a winner no matter where it is. Maybe he'd rather go to the Nationals. Maybe he'd rather, and that's entirely possible. But there's no reason you can't go to him and ask the question. We're willing to give you, just throwing it out there, 2 and 25 rather than just have 1 year of stability at third base for us. We like what you bring to the table. This is what we're willing to do. which isn't that far off of his $15 million guarantee. It's $12.5 million. And again, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying he couldn't get more on the open market. I'm not saying he could. But another way to grab one of those wins is by, even if you don't buy aggressively at the deadline, is by not selling. I mean, it's one thing to not sell a big-time pending free agent that's likely to net you something that's really going to help you either now or next year. But the chances of that, I mean, there's certainly no guarantee that Drew Steckenrider and or Kendall Graveman, or the combination of, if you put them in the same deal and trade both of them to one team, that the player or players you get in return are helping you right away or next year or have bigger upside for 3 years down the road. It's not great. They're not Aroldis Chapman. They're not Josh Hader. They're not elite relievers. They're good, solid, quality relievers that a contending team would get for 2 months. So maybe that's the territory we're actually moving into, where the Mariners they're not selling. Like maybe we're getting, I think that's probably what we're getting closest to. The Mariners just turning off and taking down the for sale sign. Maybe that's it. And I do think if the Mariners keep playing the way that they are, that Jerry will do something to add to the club. I do believe that. And I don't know that there's a threshold. Like they have to be 3 back with 2 teams to pass. I don't know that there's a threshold. I think if you're Jerry Dipoto in this case, only if it looks likely you're making the postseason do you get really aggressive. And you're probably not looking for expensive rentals no matter what happens. But again, what do I always say about Jerry? I don't know that he's a good GM. I don't know that. But we know he's creative. We absolutely know Jerry in that front office can be creative. 3 team deals. Off the, kind of off the radar, under the radar additions that end up helping them. We know he's good at that.